Madison always chose the cafe. It was one of those spots tucked into a quiet corner of the city, not flashy, but curated. The kind of place with handwritten chalkboard menus and soft indie jazz humming just loud enough to make you lean in to talk. Our table was always by the window. The staff knew us well enough to ask if we wanted our usual, without needing to point to the menu. That kind of familiarity used to feel comforting. That night it felt like a trap. We were halfway through dinner. She was on her second glass of wine, swirling it absent-mindedly, when her phone lit up between us. A screen flash, not loud, not jarring, but enough to slice through the background noise. She had placed her phone screen up on the table, which I immediately clocked as strange. Madison never left her phone face up. In fact, it had become a bit of a joke between us, how she always turned it over the moment she set it down, just to avoid distractions, she used to say. She claimed it was a boundaries thing, and I believed her, but this time it was face up, like she forgot, or like she wanted me to see. And there it was, the message. Don't forget the lingerie. Miss you already. Black heart. Just like that. No name. Just a string of words that didn't belong. That shouldn't have belonged. In the middle of our dinner, in the middle of our life. I stared at it longer than I probably should have. Maybe 2 seconds, maybe 10. But the world felt frozen in that moment. My fork hovered midair. My mind scrambled for context it didn't have. Madison didn't react immediately. Didn't reach for the phone in panic. Didn't laugh nervously or stammer. No. She calmly picked it up, flipped its screen down with one fluid motion, and smiled. The kind of smile people practice in mirrors. "Oh my God," she said lightly, almost amused. "That's probably just Liz being an idiot again. She does that. Sends random messages from people's phones when they leave them unlocked. Dumb stuff." She gave a little eye roll, like the whole thing was too ridiculous to even take seriously. No embarrassment. No hesitation. Just a smooth explanation. So smooth, in fact, it felt off. I didn't answer. I just kept chewing, nodding slightly, not trusting myself to speak yet. I've always believed that you can learn more from what someone doesn't say. Madison didn't ask, "Wait, what did it say?" She didn't try to look surprised or confused. She didn't ask if I believed her. She just moved on, as if we'd agreed silently to pretend. She went back to her pasta. I went back to pretending I still had an appetite. She was still talking about her day, about a client who'd sent an all-caps email, about how she hated the new intern's perfume. Normal things, safe things. But beneath the surface, everything felt different, because something broke inside me in that moment. Not all at once. Not in the dramatic way they show in movies, where a glass shatters and someone runs out into the rain. No, it was slower than that. Quieter. Like a fine crack forming under pressure, the kind you only notice later, after the damage has spread. And I kept wondering, why was her phone unlocked? Why now, after all this time, had she left it face up? Madison didn't make careless mistakes like that. Unless it wasn't a mistake. Unless part of her wanted me to see it. I looked at her across the table. Her eyes sparkled under the dim lighting. Her hair tucked behind one ear. She looked beautiful, comfortable, composed. Too composed. There was no trace of worry on her face. No sweat on her brow. No rush to explain further. Just normalcy. Or at least her performance of it. She took another sip of wine. Then, almost as an afterthought, reached into her purse and turned on Do Not Disturb. And that, somehow, hit me harder than the message. Because that wasn't for Liz. That wasn't to stop a prank. That was containment. Damage control. It was like watching someone clean up a spill before it spread too far. Like she was managing a fire she'd already accepted had started. She didn't ask me what I was thinking. Didn't ask if I was okay. Just kept talking, and I kept listening, nodding when I was supposed to. The way people do when the conversation is only on the surface and their minds are 10 feet under. I replayed the message over and over in my head. Don't forget the lingerie. Miss you already. Black heart. Whoever sent it had confidence. That wasn't a mistake or a one-off. That was someone who expected to be remembered. Someone who was used to being part of her day. And miss you already. That meant he'd seen her today. Recently. Before dinner. Possibly minutes before. I stared at my plate, the pasta suddenly cold, and felt something sink in my chest. It wasn't just betrayal I felt. It was distance. I looked at Madison and realized she was farther away from me now than she had ever been, even though she was just 2 feet across the table. I was sitting in front of someone who might be playing a role, someone who was no longer choosing us. But I didn't say any of this out loud. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't ready for the answer. Not yet. Instead, I let her talk. I watched her push food around her plate and joke about how she needed to cut back on carbs. I watched her smile and compliment the waiter and laugh when he remembered her drink order. I watched her carry on as if nothing had happened. And the more I watched, the more I realized how SK*led she was. This wasn't new. This wasn't the first time she'd had to explain something away. I started noticing little things I hadn't picked up on before. The new earrings, the fresh manicure, the way she'd stopped checking in during the day like she used to. A few weeks ago, she'd casually mentioned wanting to be more spontaneous with her schedule, which at the time, I had thought was personal growth. Now, I wondered if it was just logistics. Toward the end of dinner, she reached across the table and touched my hand. Lightly, the way she always used to when things were good. The kind of gesture that said, "We're still okay, right?" And I let her. I smiled back. I said nothing. Not because I believed her story. Not because I had forgiven anything. But because sometimes, silence is the only tool you have left. Let them talk. Let them act. Let them feel safe. Because the moment someone thinks you aren't looking, that's when the truth shows itself. When the check came, she grabbed it first, joking that it was her turn to treat me. She paid, tipped generously, and walked out of the cafe like nothing was wrong. I followed her into the night. But inside, everything had shifted. I wasn't her husband anymore. Not really. I was her mirror, and I had just seen the first crack. After that dinner, my mind didn't rest. Not for a second. For the next few days, I didn't confront her. I didn't bring up the message or the friend prank, or even the way she turned her phone off like she was shutting the lid on a box full of evidence. I let it breathe. I played dumb. Or maybe I played patient. But inside, something in me had shifted. A filter had dropped, and everything started looking different. When you suspect someone you love is lying, even the smallest details suddenly scream. And once you start listening, you can't unhear it. It began with the clothes. Madison had always dressed well, but lately, it was different. Subtle at first. A sharper silhouette. New heels, taller than her usual. Tops that showed just a bit more. Even her earrings seemed deliberately chosen now, like accessories for a character she was trying on. And makeup, that one hit the hardest. Madison used to tease me about makeup commercials. Said things like, "Why spend an hour painting your face when you can just sleep an extra hour and have a better day?" I loved that about her. She never felt the need to impress anyone. That was our thing, not caring about appearances. But now, she had a brand-name foundation she swore was on sale, and a $45 lipstick she just wanted to try. She started leaving early in the mornings, earlier than she needed to, and when I asked about it, she'd say she wanted time for coffee alone before work. It sounded reasonable. First. Then came the Thursdays. She started calling them book club nights. A group of women from work, she said. Some old friends from college. They met at a cafe across town, the same cafe every week. When I offered to drop her off once, said I'd been meaning to explore the bookstore nearby anyway, she smiled too fast and said no. Said it would mess with the flow of things. Taxi's easier. Less awkward, she said. Besides, we get into messy conversations, she added, laughing. Trust me, you don't want to sit through a bunch of women dissecting romance novels. Except, she never brought a book home, and when I asked which one they were reading this month, she blinked, then said something like, the Lighthouse something, the one with the blue cover. I searched for it. There was no such title. The next Thursday I asked again, more casually this time. She told me it was Beneath the Sea Glass Moon. That one did exist. I looked it up, A light beach red, supposedly. The funny thing? I checked her nightstand. No sign of it. And when I left a copy of it on the kitchen counter, saying, "Hey, I figured I'd check it out too," she never touched it. Didn't even comment on it. That was when I started keeping a private list just in my phone under a fake grocery app. One small thing at a time. Book club with no books. Blue cover lie. Makeup she used to hate. Early mornings, longer showers. Phone face up, then never again. D&D mode every night. New passwords on everything. And the perfume. God, the perfume. One night, she came home late. Later than she said she would. Claimed the club, ran long, and she'd stayed to help a friend with a flat tire. I was already in bed when she got in. She kissed my cheek, said she'd shower in the morning. I rolled over, half asleep, and caught a scent. Not her usual vanilla musk thing, something else. Heavier. Masculine. Clean but spicy. Cologne. I sat up. "Did you try a new body wash?" She froze. Just a half second. Then, "Oh, I think one of the girls sprayed samples at me as a joke." We stopped by the department store. I forgot it was still on me. I nodded slowly. "Smells expensive." She laughed it off. "Well, they're dramatic." The next day, the sheets still smelled like it. Couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned and stared at the ceiling like it held answers. Like the silence would just crack and say it. "She's lying to you." And still, I said nothing. Not yet. Because once you say it out loud, once you ask, you can't go back. The moment you put it into words, it becomes real. Permanent. You can't unring a bell like that. So I watched instead. She started disappearing into the bathroom with her phone more often. She'd scroll with her head down, then lock the screen quickly whenever I got near. Once, I asked for the time when my watch had died, and she actually pulled the phone back as I reached toward it, like I was trying to steal something. I laughed it off, made a joke. She smiled too wide and said, "It's cracked. I don't want you to cut yourself." The screen wasn't cracked. Later that week, I found her doing laundry, her own separately. That was new. We always did our laundry together. I asked if something had stained her new white blouse, and she blinked again, that same pause. "Yeah. Wine from the office thing. Dry red. Disaster." I never saw a stain, but I saw something else. While she was in the shower, I checked the pockets of the jeans she'd tossed in the hamper. I didn't know what I was expecting to find. A receipt, maybe. But what I found instead was a small black card. The kind you get from boutique perfume shops when they let you sample something. It was labeled Noir Intention. I sniffed it. Same scent as the sheets. A few days later, I Googled it. A high-end men's cologne. $135 a bottle. The ad copy read, "For the man who doesn't chase, he waits." I don't know why that line stuck with me. Maybe because I realized I'd been chasing. Chasing the version of her I thought still existed. She changed her phone's passcode a week later. I noticed because I walked by the kitchen just as she picked it up. She was typing something with her thumb, and the lock screen flashed. It used to be our anniversary date, 0707. I watched her fingers. Now it was longer, something alphanumeric. I asked why she changed it. She shrugged. "Work policy. They're cracking down on security." I checked the policies. No such update. By then, I wasn't even surprised. It was like I was living in a museum of my own relationship, walking through rooms full of things that used to mean something, only to realize they were just exhibits now. Staged. Preserved. No longer alive. Even the way she touched me had changed. Shorter hugs. No lingering glances. Kisses that used to land slow and soft now felt like punctuation marks. Quick. Functional. One night, we were brushing our teeth side by side. I looked over at her. Really looked. And realized I hadn't seen her smile at me in weeks. Not a real smile. Not the kind that makes you feel like home. She caught me staring and tilted her head. "What?" I just shook my head. "Nothing. You've been quiet lately." She shrugged again. "Busy week." Busy. That word started showing up everywhere. Busy at work. Busy with the book club. Busy with last-minute meetings. Busy with errands she ran alone now. Busy with the gym she just joined across town because they have better yoga instructors. But there was no yoga mat in her car. No gym bag. Just her purse. The same gym, every Tuesday and Friday. That's when I drove by one night. I know how that sounds. I hated myself for doing it. But I needed to see. Needed to know. Her car wasn't there. Not at the gym. Not anywhere in that parking lot. But a black Audi, newer model, was parked along the side street. It had tinted windows and the same boutique cologne hanging in the rearview. I didn't stick around. I didn't want to be seen. Instead, I drove home and stared at the front door for a long time before walking in. She got back an hour later. Said traffic had been awful. I asked, "How was yoga?" She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "Restorative." I nodded, but all I felt was hollow. Christmas at Madison's parents' house had always followed the same script. Her mother overcooked the turkey. Her father drank one glass too many and told the same stories. And her younger sister hovered on the edge of every conversation, waiting for someone to trip so she could ask questions. It was loud, warm, predictable, safe. This year it felt like a stage set. Madison was radiant that evening. Too radiant. Her hair curled perfectly. Her dress fitted just enough to turn heads. Her smile polished and ready. She moved through the house like she belonged somewhere else entirely, greeting relatives, laughing at jokes I'd heard 10 times before. If anyone had looked closely, they might have noticed how rarely she stood next to me. We sat at the long dining table, plates heavy, wine already flowing. Her mother asked about work. Her father complained about traffic. I answered where I was expected to, nodded when it was my turn. Madison talked more than usual, filling every gap, controlling the rhythm. I understood why now. Silence is dangerous when lies are present. The topic of travel came up naturally. Her aunt asked if we'd gone anywhere nice this year. Madison jumped in before I could speak. "Seattle," she said brightly. "Work trip. Great city. So much rain." Her mother smiled. "Oh yes, you mentioned that. With your coworkers, right?" Madison nodded, reaching for her glass. "Yeah, team thing. I don't know why I asked. That's the truth. It wasn't planned. I didn't wake up that morning intending to detonate my marriage at a Christmas table. But something about the way she said it, the smoothness, the confidence, flipped a switch in me. I looked at her and said, "Who booked the tickets again?" The fork stopped halfway to her mouth. It was subtle, but I saw it. Pause that didn't belong. She said. "The tickets," I repeated. "You mentioned it was last minute. I couldn't remember if your company handled it or if you did." The table quieted just a little. Not enough for alarm, but enough to feel the shift. Madison opened her mouth, then closed it. Her sister, God bless her timing, leaned forward. "I thought you went alone," she said casually. "Didn't you post that picture from the airport by yourself?" Madison's mother pressed her lips together. Her father cleared his throat. Madison laughed, too loudly. "No, I just arrived earlier. Different flights." "Really?" her sister said. "Because I remember you texting me saying you hated traveling solo." I watched Madison's face change, just for a second. The smile didn't vanish, it fractured, like glass under stress. "I don't remember that," Madison said. Silence. 30 seconds can stretch forever when no one knows what to say. In that space, everything collapsed. Her mother looked from Madison to me, slowly. Her eyes weren't angry, they were calculating. The kind of look you give when you realize you've been lied to but don't yet know how deep it goes. Madison's father shifted in his chair. "Mads," he said carefully. "Who were you with?" That was it. The illusion didn't shatter. It dissolved. Madison didn't answer. She stared at her plate, then at her hands, then finally at me. And in that look, I saw something I'd never seen before. Resignation. Not guilt. Not fear. Acceptance. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Every eye in the room snapped to me. "I think I'm done," I said. My voice sounded calm, detached, like it didn't belong to me. Madison looked up sharply. "Daniel." But I was already grabbing my coat. No shouting. No accusations. No dramatic speech. I didn't need to explain anything. The truth was sitting right there at the table with us. Heavier than the turkey. Colder than the room had suddenly become. I walked out into the winter air, my breath fogging in front of me, my hands shaking only after I reached the car. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I drove home alone. And somewhere between the first red light and the empty highway, I realized something important. I didn't need proof anymore. I had the truth. And that was worse and better than anything I'd been afraid to find. The day after Christmas, I woke up early. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because I didn't want to dream anymore. The house was quiet, hollow in a way I couldn't quite explain. Madison wasn't home. She'd stayed at her parents' house after I left the dinner, claiming she needed space to think. I didn't argue. I didn't even reply. It was the first time in weeks that silence felt like peace. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of unopened mail we'd been ignoring for months. Credit card offers, bank statements, promotional flyers. For some reason, I started opening them. That's when I saw it. A letter from our mortgage company. A follow-up notice actually thanking us for refinancing. Only we hadn't. I opened the envelope fully, pulled out the documents. My name was on the signature line. The date was 6 months ago. A Tuesday. I remembered that evening because Madison had come home with takeout and a folder, saying something about the bank needing one last quick signature to lock in a lower rate. She handed me a single sheet, the top page. I was tired. I signed. I never saw the rest. Until now. My name appeared at the bottom of every page. Digitally signed. Neat. Uniform. Forged. I flipped through the pages again. Slowly, this time looking at where the money had gone. $78,000 withdrawn from the equity. Transferred to a separate account. A name I didn't recognize, Caleb R. Whitaker. The only Caleb I'd ever heard her mention worked in IT and transferred out 2 years ago. This wasn't him. I opened my laptop, pulled up our bank accounts and started going backward. That's when the pattern emerged. Small, hidden under the noise, but there. Every month since the refinance. Transfers to the same checking account, listed under joint bill pay, masked as utilities, gym memberships, even a fake insurance code. The numbers were staggered, $300 here, $450 there, $600 once. Like someone deliberately trying not to trip any alerts. Then I checked the credit card statements. That's when I stopped breathing for a moment. Payment to Ridgeview Apartments, every 10th of the month. Not our building. Not our account. I searched the name. Small complex on the other side of town, close to the industrial district. Next door, a boutique fitness studio, the same place Madison said she was taking advanced Pilates twice a week. There were also Uber charges that aligned with those nights, rides from our house to Ridgeview, and then back around 10:45 p.m. I clicked on a transaction for a rideshare labeled shared expense and noticed the tip line. She tipped the driver 35%. Madison barely tipped 20% unless she was trying to impress someone. I leaned back in my chair. Everything was right there. The book club that never read books. The gym she never entered. The trips she claimed were for work. The cologne on the sheets. The silence in the car rides home. It wasn't just betrayal. It was planning. Months of it. The man, Caleb Whitaker, appeared on a LinkedIn search as a mid-level marketing consultant at her company. I recognized him from a group photo they took at a company picnic back in June. He was in the back, smiling, hand on Madison's shoulder. I had dismissed it then, just a colleague. Now I saw it clearly, her leaning slightly into him. Not in an obvious way, just enough to register if you were looking for it. And now I checked her Venmo next. Most of it was private, but a few were public. She'd sent Caleb a $25 payment months ago labeled Burgers and Karma Hamburger. And another for Lunch X3 Money with Wings. She rarely used emojis. The one that caught my attention? A transfer titled, Covering You Again. Your turn next time, winky face. I felt sick. I didn't know what disturbed me more. The money, the lying, or the fact that she'd used my name, my signature, my trust to cover someone else's debt. This wasn't an affair anymore. This was collaboration. A long con happening under my roof with my name on the lease. I kept digging. I found a storage receipt under her email, one of those climate-controlled units with a key code. The auto-renewal charge had been running for 4 months. When I checked the address, it was only 10 minutes from Ridgeview Apartments. What was in there? Clothes? Gifts? Evidence? I didn't know. Not yet. I closed the laptop slowly, like shutting a door. In the reflection of the screen, I saw myself, and I didn't recognize the man staring back. I wanted to scream, throw the laptop, call her and demand answers, but something stopped me, something colder than rage. A voice in my head that said, "Now you know. So what are you going to do about it?" And the answer, slowly forming behind my teeth, was simple. You're going to take it back. All of it. The next morning, I made coffee like usual. Same mug. Same ritual. Madison still wasn't home. She texted me late the night before. Something vague about needing time and not wanting to say something she couldn't unsay. I didn't answer. She thought I was still reeling from Christmas dinner. She had no idea how far things had already moved. No screaming. No confrontation. Just a different kind of silence now, the deliberate, focused kind. The kind that builds. I opened a new folder on my laptop and named it something stupid. Q1 Budgets. Inside, I created subfolders. Accounts, photos, docs, messages. I wasn't even sure what I was doing at first. I just knew I needed to make it real, organized, contained. My first step was the mortgage. I scanned every page of the refinance contract, highlighting the digital signature line she'd forged. I compared it side by side with a real one I'd signed months earlier. Slight differences, too perfect, no pressure inconsistency, no tilt from my left-handed awkwardness. Forgery. I called the bank's fraud department. I told them I believed someone had used my identity to approve a loan I hadn't read or consented to. I used words like unlawful and digitally manipulated. They opened a case. Then I emailed a lawyer. I didn't want drama. I wanted documentation. I wanted a timeline, a list of what counted as financial abuse in our state and options. Clean, clinical options. I wasn't planning to destroy her. Not yet. But I wasn't going to be the fool in this story either. Then I took a **T of the apartment rental payments, the ones to Ridgeview. I paired them with the Uber logs. Then the boutique cologne purchase from our joint account, the one she said was a birthday gift for her father, even though he was allergic to strong scents. Next, her emails. She always left her laptop signed in. Careless, really. Or maybe she thought I'd stopped looking a long time ago. There weren't many red flags in her inbox, at least not directly. But I found order confirmations. Food delivery receipts. One went to a unit at Ridgeview number 204. The name on the receipt said Whitaker. It wasn't even subtle. I saved everything. I started tracking her calendar. She'd once shared it with me, for convenience. Back when we still tried to sync dinner plans and birthdays. She'd never revoked access. That too was a mistake. I watched her cancel a supposed Thursday book club meet and replace it with an event labeled Project Night. No location. Just a block from 7 to 11 p.m. Project. What project? I cross-checked it with her company's internal site. There were no ongoing team projects requiring off-hours attendance. Her position didn't demand late-night collaboration. No travel. No deadlines. Just another lie clothed in corporate language. I didn't react. I didn't even change my behavior. I started setting alerts instead. If she used her key card at the Ridgeview complex, I wanted to know. If a shared credit line got charged outside our usual radius, I wanted a ping. I also reached out to her company's anonymous ethics hotline. That was the part one didn't plan, at least not initially. But once I saw the forged signature on the mortgage paperwork again, something in me clicked. This wasn't just infidelity. This was financial fraud. And it wasn't just against me. She'd charged business meals on our joint account. 2 lunches at upscale restaurants. One on a day she claimed to be homesick. I attached the receipts, the matching Uber logs, and a note that said, "Expense reports may contain inconsistencies with personal financial records. Recommend cross-checking with HR policy." I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. Then came the messages. That one I sat on for hours, staring at the chat history. Madison and Caleb had mostly used apps I couldn't access. She was smart that way, but she slipped up once. She sent him a photo of herself from our living room mirror. Just her shoes, legs crossed, captioned, "On my way soon. You win." I caved on the heel's winking face. She deleted it a few minutes later. But my backup software didn't. I archived it. By the end of the day, my folder had over 60 items. Each one a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Each one another nail in the coffin of what we used to be. I didn't feel power hungry. I didn't feel like a man taking revenge. What I felt was clear. For the first time in months, I could have confronted her. Could have thrown the evidence on the table and asked her why. Could have shouted, made her feel small. But what would that fix? What would that prove? That I was angry? She already knew that. Instead, I decided I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing how much she'd broken me. I would let the system speak for me. The bank, the law, her employer. Let them be the mirror she refused to look into. And me? I'd be right here, quiet, watching, waiting, the way she used to think she was getting away with it. But this time the silence was mine, and I wasn't afraid of it anymore. It started with a locked screen. A week after I submitted everything to her company's compliance office, Madison's corporate login failed. She thought it was a system error. Tried again, then again. I watched her from the kitchen. Laptop open, coffee going cold. Her hands moved slower. She restarted the device. Nothing. 2 hours later, HR called her in. They handed her a suspension letter. Pending investigation. That was all it took. I didn't ask what it said. I didn't have to. When she came home, she was all sunshine and apology. Made breakfast, played our old playlists, lit the expensive candle she used to save for weekends. She danced around like she could reverse time if she just smiled enough. I didn't bite. I sat at the table, nodding occasionally, pretending the coffee didn't taste like ash. She checked her phone obsessively. Her payroll card was declined 3 days later. I watched her try to laugh it off at the grocery store. Paid in cash, cheeks flushed. She bought only essentials: eggs, milk, cheap wine. At home, she looked hollow. Not crying, not angry, just unraveling. And I was still there, no accusations, no confrontation. Just presence. The same presence she had once ignored. Now it felt like a weight. I sent 2 more tips. One to the IRS, discrepancies in address declarations. One to the leasing office at Ridgeview, forged income documents. All anonymous. All verifiable. The cracks weren't just in our marriage anymore. They were everywhere she stood. Weeks passed. Madison didn't speak much. She moved like a ghost. Cleaning, cooking, trying to mimic a life we no longer had. The suspension turned into termination. Her emails stopped coming. Her phone rarely lit up anymore. Then, one afternoon, she showed up at my office. Formal dress, perfect makeup, like the version of her from a year ago. She handed the receptionist an envelope and waited. Inside was a single sentence, printed center-aligned. "Regret is a poor currency. I don't trade in it." She stood there as they read it. Didn't flinch. When she turned to leave, the automatic door hesitated. She stepped forward, expecting it to open. Didn't. She had to step back, wait for it to register her again. Symbolic. 3 months later, her name disappeared from every professional directory I searched. Her LinkedIn was wiped. No trace left in the industry she once bragged about. That night, she sent one last message. "You got what you wanted. I give up." I stared at it, then typed, "I only wanted silence between me and lies." I deleted the message after sending it. No **T. No archive. No anger. Just closure. The kind that comes when you finally close a door, and know this time it won't open again.